Hey, what's up, guys? This video is dedicated to somebody left a comment in my comment section of the OG Chris Beats video when I was mixing his beat, because what he said wasn't it didn't really tick me off, because it was a great question and a great way to approach how to, just to have an opinion. Because sometimes people have opinions, and you're taught by somebody else, and maybe they have like a warped sense of way of looking at things, or just a set in their ways of how to do it. That's kind of how engineering works. But he was talking about that when I was mixing the track, that the track was clipping, and I was telling them about certain things. So this basically, I'm gonna play the track in a second, but I just want to talk about the basic title is going to be Loudness War, Digital Clipping, and something else. Hyper compression. And these are all things that tie into each other, because as we move on to almost 2016, there's things that are happening that people are doing over and over again. They don't understand, and one of the things is technology kind of changes. So let's talk about the loudness war. Before I do, I'm just gonna go ahead and play this track. I already played it in the parallel compression video, so be prepared for it again if you're going to listen, if you're watching this from that. And new people, hopefully you'll enjoy. 3, 2, 1. So as you can see, it was well beyond 6 dB, but one thing you might have noticed is that the whole entire track, if you have an audio interface that does have like a VU meter or some type of peak meter, you'll notice that just the kick drum was peaking. That is actually kind of like a style that I actually like. I actually a piece to that style, and one of the people that actually use this style, and they kind of use it, well, they obviously use it better than me, is Andrew Sheps, which is a recording engineer that's worked with many of rock artists, and then Jay-Z and Adele. So what I'm trying to get to is that, and I'm going to talk about the loudness war. The loudness war is basically based upon this theory right here, and it's not necessarily a theory because it's proven. As we move on and as music moves on, music is becoming louder. Like there's actually tracks, like if you listen to like Big Room, if you heard of it, or if you listen to Big Room house music, you notice that's all the way up to 10 dB is how loud it is. But that's kind of like the style of the music, and kind of how that is expressed in that mix that makes that style what it is. Thus the meaning Big Room. So you can add, and the reason why that kind of works in that sense, a big room, is because the snare, if there's any snare at all, which usually when I hear big room, it's just nothing but kick drum and synth, because there's so much room, there's so much headroom, you're able to get stuff louder, and by getting it louder, it doesn't necessarily clip, but it is extremely loud. But in the theory of the loudness war, from 1980s to 1990s to 2000, once again, music has gotten louder, which means that people, in terms of the loudness war, that music is harder to listen to for a longer amount of time because of the loudness, because your ears are getting worn out faster. Now that is true for most cases, and most people also, in the terms of loudness. Your average day-to-day music lover or music listener usually thinks that louder is better, and they'll learn to listen to their music louder. So why not even add that in there? But there's some problems with that, as you can see in this example I'm playing again. Now, give or take that this track has the right amount of headroom to where the snare itself is not peaking, the melody is not peaking, but the track is very aggressive, and it's because I use parallel compression on it just to get kind of like all the characteristics of the loudness that I wanted, but at the same time the characteristics of the compression to keeping it from being too loud and very distractive, unless, in particular, this is not your style of music, which is another story. Now there's the thing, once again, when we're talking about loudness war, and I'm going to pull up Presswork, so we're going to sit here for a while, not going anywhere for a while. Grab a Snicker bar, guys. But yeah, as it pulls up, there's a thing called hypercompression. Now, hypercompression by no means is anything real cool. Hypercompression is something being overly compressed and being extremely loud. So observe. Now, mind you, I warn you, wear headphones if you are, but this is going to be pretty loud because I'm going to over exaggerate this mix. Oops. That is hypercompression. That is very, very loud. And for some reason, a lot of people actually do their mixes like that and really don't know. And now there's also a certain thing, the characteristic about this particular compressor. This particular compressor has its own kind of vintage characteristics, as in, so that it prevents me from pushing stuff louder than usual, but it gives a kind of what you call musical distortion. Now, the term musical meaning that, it's enjoyable. That's how you should look at the way once people say something that's musical, is that it's enjoyable, that it's there, but it's adding flavor to the track. It is giving the track a distinctive sound, versus it being sonically neutral, as if I was to use such plugins such as Maximus. And that's just the nature of Presswork and usually analog gear, which is basically kind of based off of it having kind of that harmonic or musical distortion. So I'm going to play Maximus real quick. Give or take that I didn't tweak Maximus to 100% fit to this track, but you will notice that this is more sonically neutral, that it doesn't glue as much as your typical analog, or even for that matter Presswork. But in the difference, it has more clarity because digital recordings are very clear. So we're going to actually talk about digital distortion versus analog distortion. Now, analog gear has its own trickery or wizardry about it, that is much more what people believe, and it's just opinion, because a lot of people that are audio engineers have been working for a while that don't care to mix in the box, meaning mixing all with just plugins or whatever, because they feel that analog is so much more superior, whatever that case may be, which is kind of it's a matter of opinion, because your average music listener does not care that if you're mixing in analog or digital at all. They just want to hear a song, make sure that it sounds right, that it's good, it sounds good because it is good. So that's like a matter of opinion, but at the same time, it's a notable opinion that you have to kind of weigh in as an engineer to know that it exists, so that you make the right decisions when you're making a mix, because you can make something sound real bad, because I can make it sound real bad in Maximus as well by, pushing up the post. So this is going to be very, very displeasing. Like, once again, that's hypercompression, that's just overly compressing something versus, having it. And once again, this compressor is sonically neutral, but at the same time, not my steez. It's my steez, but it's not my steez. But it's good, it's still a good compressor. Give or take that you learn about it, which I do teach in my playlist of mixing and mastering about Maximus. So now back to it. Now, in the analog world, there's less headroom than it is in the digital world, and that's because of this right here. In the analog world, they are boards and stuff like that go up to like 192, as far as the sample rate in hertz, kilohertz, I believe. But when it goes down, and when you press it down to CD, vinyl, or whatever, that it has to be specifically red books is what an old school term, for CDs or whatever. It has to be specifically kind of like at 0 dB or less, because it will add displeasing harmonic distortion, which won't be musical. So, but in the digital world, you're able to achieve, and this is another reason why the loudness was significant and kind of weird and retroactive, because in the digital world, you can actually push your volume a lot more without having such noticeable and displeasurable harmonic distortion, and and it'll be just fine, and it'll still sound kind of musical in most aspects, until maybe you go to something that's a more analog setting, like via a PA system or something like that, versus listening to an iPad or whatever, or iPod or whatever, iPhone, whatever, your mobile device. So those are things that you have to put in consideration when it comes to the loudness war. So you actually can get away with a lot more in the digital world versus the other world. I mean, the reason why is because you're working basically 32 a bit float. So if you actually see that, and I think it might be a representation. I'm just going to go to save 32 bit float. You see like 24 bit and then 32 bit float. You can actually do that, and it'll play. But unfortunately, if you're not working in a digital world and you're trying to get it on CD, you have to have it at 16-bit. There's no way around it, because that's the highest density that CDs can handle. So keep that in mind. So that's why there's certain things that are significant in digital clipping, and versus analog clipping, and listen to music analog, via CD, tape, vinyl, 8-track. Nobody listens to stuff for 8-track, but those things do matter in that type of sense, because because of the format's limitations. But in the digital world, the limitations are much higher. The limitations are less, and the possibilities are higher because of it being in the digital world. So that's why I can get away with a little bit of digital clipping, and necessarily it's just on my kick drum, and kick drums have a little bit more room because lower frequencies aren't that prominent in most mixes per se. And on digital devices, and I heard somebody talk about, oh well, I want it to sound good on your phone. Good luck, because your typical iPhone and your mobile devices only gonna be able to translate certain frequency spectrums because of the size of the speaker. The speaker has to be a certain size for it to actually translate, maybe 20K, or go down here, mess with this, to translate 30, 20K, 10K, or even in certain higher frequencies, that might be that are pretty much inaudible to human hearing. So that's basically about it. That's all I wanted to talk about here. And if you really want to get into it, there's plenty of YouTube videos about the loudness war, and you hear some interesting arguments. But that's all I got to say there, and that's pretty much my knowledge in a nutshell, from me mixing for about 15-20 years, and my general experience with it. Because now a lot of stuff is possible versus me working on just analog gear that I had in the past. And I still have like outboard compressors and analog compressors and stuff like that. I have my Alesis 3630, and I have, what the heck is, dang, I can't see it now, but it's but yeah, I have compressors now. I have outboard gear. But anyways, if you like this video, give it a like, smash that like button if you like what I was talking about. Hopefully you made it this far, because this is very important stuff. And if you have any comments, leave a comment. Hey, I would like to hear your views on this. Is louder better? And is it cool for you to have stuff very subtle when you mix? Because again, and in closing, there is give or take that when you get stuff mastered, it cannot be very loud, because the engineer cannot work with it because there won't be enough headroom, which I talk about in that video, which I think he might have overlooked, but it's all good. Anyways, if you have any questions, ask. And check out my other playlists. I have other stuff that's very informative as well, more instructive hands-on stuff, that will work in not just FL Studio and other DAWs as well. So yeah, check it out. And thank you so much for your time. I am out.